Christmas is the most wonderful time of the year. I think we should write a song about it. It really is, because I think it's this time of the year more than any other time when we realize just how little we have and how much we need. So I had an epiphany. I was recently at Costco, and God spoke to me in the midst of this. And I realized that my 40-inch wall-mounted flat-screen TV is small. It really is. It is small. I mean, it's not that old, but it's just, the image is at 10 feet, like where the couch is. It's just, they're like not even half life size. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm realizing as I stand in Costco, there's so much more out there. And it's not just small, it's dumb. I didn't realize this, but TVs now are smart. There are smart TVs, and mine's not. So I don't know exactly what they did, how they packed little brains inside these TVs, but I am telling you, mine is dumb. It is small, it is dumb, and I should do something better. I mean, it would only make sense at this point. It's really a great time of the year for me to do that. And this, of course, happens in every area of life. I told you guys that this past year, the boys and I have gone into archery. A bow and arrow, and we go to an archery range, and we shoot target practice and that kind of a thing. We have a great time with it. It's really fun. I did a little research. I found out that the first hint of an arrowhead might be as old as something like 69,000 years ago. They actually have a real bow from about 9,000 or 10,000 years ago. Still preserved fairly well. I don't think it's usable, but it's a bow from 9,000 years ago. You would think that after 9,000 years of bow and arrow, they would have perfected the thing. But no, every single year, there are new bows and new arrows, and they are faster, and they're quieter, and they've got all sorts of cool add-ons. Now, who doesn't love add-ons? With every purchase you have that you can make, you can always add on to it. Isn't that an awesome part of being in this country? You can always add on. So I can get stabilizers, and I can get line silencers, and I can get super cool arrows that, I saw an arrow that flashes. This little thing, it flashes, so in case you lose it, you can go find it, because it's very cool stuff. I can see you're very excited. This sort of helps explain a little bit of the kind of the frantic Twinkie thing going on. I don't know, you guys realize that Twinkies are now an endangered species, right? Because Hostess is out of business. Some horrible, horrible people caused the collapse of this great American institution. And so now Twinkies are, I actually decided I was going to treat you guys to Twinkies. And so I went to a whole bunch of stores, and they're really gone. They're gone. Store after store, empty shelves. Some Debbie is trying to take the place of my Twinkies and ding-dongs and ring-dings and all of these things. I'm like, little Debbie, you're not cutting it. I don't even see anything that even looks like a Twinkie. And they're really gone. So I turned to Craigslist because I thought you deserve it. And I figured on Craigslist there are Twinkies available on Craigslist. So I contacted one guy. He wanted $75 for a box of Twinkies. $75, which is why, of course, I have no Twinkies for any of you, because I'm cheap, and I'm not going to buy you guys $75 Twinkies. So, yeah, I'm like, what? People who never even had Twinkies really feel like we need them. We want them. I never had. Now I might never get a chance. I certainly hope someone buys up the brand. My goodness. Because this is the time of the year where we get to see how little we have and how much we need. This is key, because there's so much great stuff out there. Arguably, the best stuff on earth. The best stuff on earth. And so we long and we desire for this stuff. This rampant materialism has become the cynics' main criticism of the season. They get to talk about our obsessions and our greed and our cheapening of the whole holiday. And understandably so. We can all see it very quickly for what it is, this longing for and collection of and identifying with, our maintaining and our protecting and our caressing of our stuff. It's a part of us that we don't even like. I don't even need to build a case as to why this isn't good for us, because most all of us here would already readily agree that it is a problem for us as a culture. Maybe we don't see it so much in our own lives, but we see it as a problem. A part of it, though, we may not fully recognize is just how effectively the pursuit of this stuff will take our attention off of God. It'll distract us from God. And it will create in us a false security. A false security. Now, of course, we know the solution to materialism is contentment. And we can talk about what that would look like and all this, and we will. But I also recognize that replacing materialism with contentment is something that we have struggled with for a very long time. How many of us haven't felt this pain, this angst of going after stuff and wishing we could be content, but not really tasting it? And yet last week we saw that the Beatitudes offered us the blessed life. The blessed life. So this morning we're going to turn back to the Beatitudes and see what they offer up to us to try to cultivate a type of contentment that will allow us to shake free of the grip of materialism. So we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5. As you're opening up in a Bible there, I'll read to you the two Beatitudes that we looked at last week. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. We saw last week that the way up toward God is actually down through poverty of spirit and mourning. And that brings us to this morning, this afternoon, which is, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Matthew chapter 5, verse 5. It ends promising, at least. Blessed are the meek, they inherit the earth. That's nice. Getting it all at the end, that's nice. It doesn't start so obvious with meekness. It just doesn't grab me. You guys know those motivational posters? I guess they were super big in the 80s, and for some reason they still linger. They put up, I was at the kids' school recently, we were for a science fair, and walking through the halls, you notice success, and then they give a little description of success, encouragement, courage, and they tell you they have some guy on a mountain looking all buff, and they tell you all of this very cool motivational things. I looked all over the place. I didn't see a single one that said meek, because I think meekness has a PR problem. I think for some reason, maybe it's simply because it sounds so much like weak, we get an idea that meek really has to do with more like fear and being pushed around and being a doormat for others. You see, when we start to speak of meek, we can't separate it from this idea of weak and wishy-washy and indecisive. But throughout the Scriptures, some of the great heroes of the faith are considered meek. Some that did the most heroic things are called meek. Jesus himself, meek. Starts as a babe in a manger. Mary, meek. Joseph, meek. These great heroes of the faith. If you were to sort of settle in on a definition to help break us from this idea that it's all about weakness and kind of wishy-washiness, think of it in terms, it might be helpful to think of it in terms of thinking of others foremost. Putting others foremost in your life. That might be a way for us to begin thinking about meekness. And suddenly, as the truth of that starts to settle in, it doesn't sound quite so weak anymore. To put others before yourself. This takes a certain amount of courage to do. Someone also described it, being meek isn't thinking less of yourself. It's not being down on yourself. It's not beating yourself up. It's not kind of looking at just the woe is me and how unworthy I am. It's not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. Huge difference. Thinking of yourself less. So that as you do that, instead of your issues, your life, your problems, your needs, your desires, and all of that filling your field of view so that all you can see and absorb is you begin to see God fill your field of view. You begin to sense that He is first and foremost in your life. And He begins to take open all of the available space. You get to soak in all of His beauty, His grandeur, His glory, His power, His love for you. And there's not much else. And the rest of this world grows strangely dim as He fills your field of view. This, I think, is expounded in another place in the Sermon on the Mount. Much of the Sermon on the Mount, by the way, is exposition on the Beatitudes. And so it's helpful to read the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount together and kind of look for some of the parallels just as a way of biblical study. Look at chapter 6, verse 19. Chapter 6, verse 19. He says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasure on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." So God, He gives us all of these kind of different ideas that seem somehow even unrelated. He talks about our eyes. This is why I refer to your field of view. What you absorb through your eyes will often cause your heart to rest on these things. So as I wander through Costco, I begin to rest my eyes on all of this various stuff, and my eyes soak in all of these things as they relate to me. And when that takes place, my treasure is now found in all of the temporal things that I see around me, things that I can touch and feel and install and play with. They begin to absorb my field. Now this is where my treasure is. Then he turns around and he says, you can't serve both God and money. You see, he's linking this idea of God filling the meek view of the heart that sees God first and foremost. He's linking this in opposition, in even competition with our stuff. Saying you can't do both. You're going to either be absorbed by one or absorbed by the other. That's your choice. There isn't going to be a middle ground. You can't serve them both. You'll see one will win out. And in large part, on what we will allow. So when we begin to see this, meekness says we put God first. That's key. That's essential. We've got to keep that at the forefront. But it also has the added benefit of creating a meekness toward others. So now we put God first and foremost, as our definition of meekness said. But when we do that, others begin to rise in prominence in our lives. And generosity will become the natural result, which is fantastic because it's another opportunity to shake free of the shackles of materialism. As others begin to move into the forefront, as we begin to become more meek toward them, then suddenly we have another tool at our disposal to shake free from materialism. Now, everyone does this in some small way. It's the utilization of our resources for the good of others. One of the manifestations of meekness in our lives. So we do this season especially. You know, you all go out to the store and ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, right? You hear the bell going, and you see the guy with a little kettle, and so you got to drop a little bit in because you just dropped like $300 in the store. You got like $3 in your pocket. You should drop a few bucks into the kettle. And so we have a little bit of generosity. What we've done is take some of our resources and help others. They've gotten really brilliant about this, by the way. So now whenever you check out at almost any store, what are they doing? Hey, would you like to add $1 to some fund? It's a very neat way of raising some great money. Except it's hard for me because they'll say to me, it just happened the other day, they're like, hey, would you like to have help give $1 to help starving children? No. how do you, like, it's phrased in such a perfect way. I'm like, of course I do. Why would I not want to give $1 to help every time I come to the store 3 times a day? We want to be able to think of others in this way, and this is a great thing. But I'm not really just talking about that thing we do a little bit of to kind of help a little or to alleviate. I'm talking about a life that is restructured and turned upside down by a discipline of meekness toward God and toward others. This is a foundational principle toward a life that wants to be free from the shackles of materialism. And for some of you, this is going to sound a little bit insane and crazy, and I understand that. But I just tell you, it's the reality. Cheryl, all right, I'll start back in a few years back. Quite a few years ago, Cheryl and I were just kind of getting serious about Christianity, and we were told that we should be generous toward others. We were instructed that it would be good for us to tithe, which means 10%. And so we did. At the time we were in college, we made about $100 a week, so we dropped $10 in the plate. Now, it's still 10%. You'd think it should matter. For some reason, it doesn't really matter. At $10, you're still going to eat beans and top ramen or whatever. It doesn't really matter. We didn't have anything. And so $10, $20, it really didn't, it wasn't a big deal. And then over the course of years, your salary begins to increase, incrementally. And that 10% starts adding up. So you get to the point where, like, in a given month, you're dropping a 50-inch plasma. And you're like, wow, what just happened? It used to be like a couple coffee drinks, and now it's like, now it's like a big deal. And yet people come to Beacon all the time, and they start asking, how is it you guys do this? Do you guys have like some sort of an underwriting? Do you get help from an organization? How is it that you get to have staff, have salaries, throw big parties and give it away for the community? How do you pay your heating bill? How do you guys do all of this stuff? It's because a number of you have so transitioned your lives that you give sacrificially. You start with a tithe, then you figure out how to be generous with the other 90%. You're amazing. What you've done is begin to shake free of the shackles of materialism. You're living with a meek attitude that says, my resources are to be used for the good of others. It's an amazing thing. And it's one of the great truths of how meekness can begin to work toward this kind of freedom. You might call it thrift or discernment or generosity or whatever. It ends in the same way. Your resource is going for the good of others. And that is a great next step. Now, besides meekness, which will reorient us away from stuff and toward God, we are further encouraged to hunger and thirst for what genuinely lasts. Look at the next verse, verse 6, back in chapter 5, verse 6. He says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. So you get the inheriting the earth thing, and now they're going to be filled. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Now, in our day and age, it's hard for us to really grasp hungering and thirsting, because most of us have never really hungered and thirsted. In many parts of the world, it is still very much a raw reality. But for most of us, it isn't. And so you have to kind of figure out what hunger and thirsting is, what it feels like, what it looks like. How is it that it's like the addict trying to get their next fix? We're talking about a hungering, a thirsting, a craving for something. I think it's very helpful, if you want to know what this is like, to go to the malls right now. And you'll start to see some real hunger and thirst. I mean, it's a crazy type of craving. You guys remember this amazing American film, Jingle All the Way? Arnold Schwarzenegger at his absolute best. Did nobody see this? Are you kidding me? This is an American classic. I mean, this is really, this is some great stuff. He needed to get the Turbo Man figurine for his son, and it was like, the wife was pressuring him, the son he had to deliver, he had to perform, and it was the must-have toy, I guess like the Furby is again. It's the must-have toy for his year. And you watch a show like this and you're like, oh my goodness, can you imagine if the world was really like this? People struggling and fighting and trying to get that last thing that they have to get. And then you watch YouTube videos about Black Friday. Here's one from Urban Outfitters. embarrassed to be human. I'm sure I saw Trevor in that crowd. That is unreal. And this is nothing. You can watch videos where people are getting trampled. People are jumping under the gates. You have police lines for security. And I mean, it is madness, hunger, and thirst. You want to talk about a crazy craving. And we look at this and we go, how could it possibly be? My goodness, these aren't normal people. And yet if we examine our hearts, we begin to see that we do hunger and thirst for things. And we crave after them in an irrational way. But then we have to understand why. What gives it the energy? What gives it its power? There has to be something about this that helps us to unlock what it is that causes this kind of seemingly mad behavior. And I think it's helpful when we begin to recognize that when we hunger and thirst, we're talking about a real and genuine need. And if we have a hunger and thirst for some real and legitimate deep soul need, and we satisfy it on cheap imitations, then suddenly they have all of this crazy energy. Because we're not making up these needs. We're actually trying to fill real hungers and real thirsts with cheap imitations. This is where things begin to get, this is one of the reasons why such craziness gets associated with our pursuit of stuff and why we hunger and thirst for all of the wrong kinds of things. For instance, take love. Imitation love. This is one of the great things about gifts. Love is notoriously difficult to quantify. You can't really measure it. But with gifts, you can. Isn't that great? So now we get to decide how much you really loved me. We get to look at gifts that you've given, and we get to compare them to the gifts that we've given. And if we can attach a sort of monetary value to them, then we know how much you love. Isn't that so helpful? I mean, think about the pressure. Maybe this is your first Christmas together, and you're dating, and this is your first Christmas, and now you've got to figure out how to buy gifts for each other. I am so sorry. The pressure must be unbearable. What if I get a gift that isn't expensive enough? What if they give me a gift that's more expensive? Did they love me more? Well, maybe it's a percentage of how much they earn, less their expenses. Now, wait. What if I spend too much and they think I'm trying to buy their love? So much pressure. It's a substitute for love. We start to buy things and we start to add all of this gift pursuit idea because it is difficult to measure love. Gifts can become a simple gauge of this. This is one of the reasons I think gift cards are so awesome. Not only can you do all of your shopping at Staples, you just pull up right there, you're like, oh yeah, this for that person and this for that. Now we know exactly how much you love. It's a $25 gift card. Now if they've given you a gift card and back, you just got to hope it's the same amount. It's like, hey, here's a $25 gift card to your favorite restaurant. And they're like, oh yeah, here's a $50 gift card. Well, now they obviously loved you more. This is why gift cards are such big business. It makes it easy to quantify. 28 billion to be precise is how much we spend, which is remarkable since it is more than the gross domestic product of 117 of the UN-listed nations. Just what we spend on gift cards. You might also instead think to yourself, what about imitation safety? A genuine need, a real longing for security and safety. This is something that we have to settle in, and instead of going after the real thing, we go after an imitation. So how do we do this? We invest in the S&P 500. We refinance our 15-year mortgage so we have more resources available later in our lives. We balance our portfolio 60-40. Wait, maybe it needs to be 40-60. We got to bolster our 401ks. We can't forget about our 529s because we're trying to secure our future, the future of our kids. We begin to wonder, are we really succeeding in that? Maybe instead it is imitation hope. Hope is a huge need. Humanity has a real and genuine longing to hope. We know that something is wrong in this world. We know it ought to be better. We know there's got to be a big payout somewhere. We have to hope, but we settle for imitations. This is why households with incomes under $13,000, so that's below poverty. I'm not talking about like a week or month or anything like that. Household annual incomes under $13,000, they spend 9% of their income on a lottery. That's a tax on the poor. Who most needs hope? See, they're looking for that big payout. So imitation hope becomes something we think we can buy. Or how about imitation reputation, which sounds like the beginning of like a grammar cartoon, right? Conjunction, junction. What? You guys don't know this one either? You guys got to watch more TV. I got a big TV in my, no. Imitation reputation. There are two reasons why we never invited Santa to our house for Christmas. Just to be careful. We never invited him, first because I didn't want him to compete with the real story of Christmas, and because I wanted all the credit for the gifts that I was buying. I worked hard all year, I shopped, I went to Amazon and I hit buy, and I want the credit. And I'm not going to give it to this guy who's not going to be around for another year. I mean, this is me. He didn't give you anything. I gave it to you. You want to be happy and thankful? I gave it to you. And so I look at something like this and I think, what is it I'm really trying to do? Now, it's partly I love my kids and I want to give them nice things and all that. Every parent understands, that feeling. But we also, I don't want them to think less of me. I don't want them to, they go to school and their friends say, hey, we got all the cool stuff and how come you don't have anything cool? And who does that look bad? Does it look bad on them? It reflects poorly on me. You see, I can buy a little bit of reputation, a little bit of status. I can surround myself and collect things and add to my collection in such a way that I can increase this status. It's imitation kind of a reputation. So instead of making do, we can buy an upgrade. Instead of quality time with the kids, we can buy them off. Instead of enjoying the blessings that we have, we can buy something flashy. And instead of inner peace, we can buy a quick distraction. And yet, these imitations, this stuff that we accumulate will not satisfy us for long. No sooner have we made a purchase that we begin regretting it, or at least start looking for the next easy win. The next swipe of a credit card that will give us some relief from the fear that we will not measure up or be safe or be loved. The hunger and thirsting for transient things results in this sort of exchange. We begin to throw ourselves into things that will not ultimately last. What we end up doing is get invited to a great Christmas banquet feast. And all of the best chefs are there. And you've got the super pastry cake people and all of the spectacular Christmas favorites. And you know it's going to be an astounding event. And you've been invited free of charge to enjoy it. But it's a little late in the day. You've had to wait a little long. And so on your way there, you begin snacking on Twinkies, ding-dongs. And by the time you get to the banquet, you're all filled up. That's what takes place. We fill up on all of the imitations. We've taken away our appetite for the righteousness that truly will satisfy. We hunger and thirst for all the wrong things. And when we fill up on all that garbage, suddenly, we have no appetite left for the stuff that would have brought us true delight. And so we cultivate this heart of meekness before our God and toward others, which creates a generosity. We hunger and thirst for the things that really do last and that really will satisfy. And we do these things by pressing deep into God. One of the most certain ways to do this is to cultivate a discipline of prayer. This is a busy time of year. Don't forget your time with God. Use this time every day. Press in to your relationship with Him. Tap in the Sermon on the Mount. It's no surprise. He gives us the model prayer, the Our Father, we call it. He gives us this prayer because He wants us to see that we can press deep into Him. We can ask Him for His resources. We can pray for Him to unmask all of these false gods in our lives, the imitations. We can ask Him for His wisdom, and we can spend time where we sit in His presence and we listen to Him. And when we do that, we pick up His vibe. about this world and about us and about how desperately we are loved. And it frees us from the need to pursue all of these imitations. And it gives us a settled contentment that rests solely on Him. Would you guys pray with me? Lord, we pray because we do know when we come to you, we are declaring our independence on you. Our dependence on you. We're declaring that we need you and that we trust you. We know that when we come to you in prayer, you've promised that you'll give us wisdom and insight, that we can use this time to know your will and to sense your love. I ask, Lord, that each person here would commit themselves to spending time with you, going through the Our Father, and spending time in reflection on your word, dwelling in your presence, having a simple conversation with their Creator. I pray that as a result of it, we would grow in a meek outlook toward you and this world, that we would see generosity unfold and we would hunger and thirst for the things that truly do last and satisfy, and that we would be increasingly freed from the tyranny of our stuff. We ask all of this in Christ's name. Amen.